You ever notice how the loudest person in the room usually has the least to show? They'll tell you everything, what they're working on, who they're talking to, the big deal that's about to close, and 6 months later, they're still talking. See, the most powerful people don't explain their purpose. They demonstrate it. They don't announce their goals. They arrive at them, because real movers don't move for validation. They move for results. You don't need to tell people what you do. You need to show them who you are. Stay with me, because once you understand why silence is your greatest marketing tool, you'll never look at self-promotion the same way again. The moment you start telling people what you do, they put you in a box. They start labeling you, comparing you, and minimizing you. You say, I'm starting a business. They say, oh, so does my cousin. You say, I'm writing a book. They say, good luck with that. And just like that, their small vision of you starts shaping your own. Stop trying to convince people that you're doing something great. Just be great. Because no explanation will ever be stronger than execution. Let your results do the talking. Because when you walk in your purpose, people can't help but notice. The wrong ears can kill the right idea. Every time you talk about your next move, you invite opinions, doubts, and fears that don't belong to you. They'll tell you what can't be done, not because it's impossible, but because they can't see themselves doing it. Protect your vision. Treat it like a seed. If you plant it in bad soil in the wrong environment, it won't grow. Silence isn't secrecy, it's strategy. You're not hiding what you do. You're protecting what you're becoming. There's a quiet confidence in people who know where they're going. They don't brag. They don't explain. They just move. You ever met someone so focused that their silence made you curious? That's power, because when you stop talking about your next step, you start taking it. Remember, noise is often a disguise for insecurity. If you truly believe in what you're doing, you don't need applause, you just need progress. People chase what they don't understand. When they can't figure you out, they study you. When they can't read your moves, they respect them. Your silence builds curiosity. Curiosity builds attention, and attention builds influence. So don't post every detail, don't tell every plan, don't explain every choice. Let them wonder, let them talk, let them watch. Because when your success shows up unannounced, it speaks louder than any explanation ever could. You don't need to tell people who you are. When you walk in excellence, the world introduces you. Your consistency becomes your resume. Your character becomes your reference. Your success becomes your introduction. The right people will recognize you not because you shouted, but because your results whispered, I'm the real thing. So stop telling people what you do. Start becoming so undeniable that they can't stop talking about you, even when you say nothing. The next time someone asks, what do you do? Smile. Say, you'll see. Because your future doesn't need an explanation, it needs execution. Don't chase recognition, chase mastery. Don't seek validation, seek results. When you stop talking about your greatness and start living it, the world will have no choice but to listen. You don't need to tell people what you do, because when you truly walk in purpose, your silence becomes your loudest statement. People don't respect talk, they respect proof. You can tell people about your dreams, your business, your plans, your potential, but none of it matters until you do something that makes them stop and say, wait, they really did that. See, we live in a world full of noise. Everyone's talking. Everyone's posting. Everyone's trying to convince the world that they're doing something significant. But very few people are actually doing the work. And the truth is, the more you talk, the less people take you seriously. Because when you tell everyone what you're about to do, you give them the illusion that you've already done something. You get a little dopamine hit from the approval, from the, wow, that's amazing comments, and suddenly your brain feels satisfied before you've even started. You lose your hunger, you lose your focus. Talking gives you temporary recognition, but execution gives you permanent respect. Nobody remembers what you said you would do. They remember what you actually did. You ever notice that when you first tell people about your goals, they nod, they smile, they act supportive, but deep down they're waiting. They're waiting to see if you actually follow through, because talk is cheap, action costs something. And not everyone is willing to pay the price. People measure you by your proof, not your promises. Think about it. If someone tells you they're a millionaire, you don't believe it because they said it. You believe it when you see how they move, how they live, how they make decisions. Their results reveal the truth far louder than their words ever could. That's how respect works. Respect isn't earned by telling your story. It's earned by living it. You can tell the world, I'm going to start a company. You can tell your family, I'm going to change everything for us. You can tell your friends, This time it's different, but until they see change, until your lifestyle starts speaking, your words are just air. The reason most people don't respect talk is because they've heard too much of it. Everyone says they're going to do something great. Everyone says they're going to break the cycle. But very few follow through when it gets uncomfortable. And the moment you start talking about your dreams, people begin to measure them. They start sizing them up through their own limitations. They start comparing your vision to their own fear. And if you're not grounded, their doubts start sounding like logic. That's why the most powerful people, the real builders, the quiet achievers, they don't explain their vision. They don't go around announcing their plans. They move in silence because they understand that the world doesn't need another promise. It needs proof. Every time you talk about what you're going to do, you give people the opportunity to doubt you. Every time you explain your goals to someone who doesn't share your vision, you give them the power to discourage you. Every time you announce your next move, you invite resistance. But when you do it first, when you let your work speak, they can't argue with the evidence. That's why winners don't chase validation. They don't need to convince anyone they're on the right path. Their proof speaks for them. Their results speak louder than any explanation could. There's a certain energy that comes from quiet focus. You stop needing applause. You stop needing recognition. You stop needing people to understand. Because your mission isn't about making noise, it's about making impact. And once your impact starts to show, the same people who doubted you will start asking, "How did you do it?" The same people who ignored you will start studying you. The same people who said you'd never make it will start acting like they believed in you the whole time. Why? Because proof changes perception. You don't have to defend your vision when it's real. You just have to manifest it when people see consistency, when they see progress. When they see transformation, they don't need an explanation. They recognize greatness when it stands in front of them. So stop trying to convince people that you're serious. Stop talking about what's about to happen. Stop explaining your goals to people who don't understand your fire. Instead, take that energy, the same energy you use to explain, and use it to build. Work in silence. Let your actions accumulate. Let your results become undeniable. Because when you finally show up with proof, the conversation changes. You'll no longer have to say, "I'm going to do this." People will say, "They did that." And that's the difference between talkers and doers. Talkers build noise, doers build legacy. Remember this? Your words might inspire people for a moment, but your proof will inspire them for a lifetime. So stop talking about what you do. Start doing what can't be ignored. Because at the end of the day, people don't respect talk. They respect proof. Not everyone is qualified to hear your plans. You have to understand something. Not every voice deserves a seat in your vision. Not every opinion is valuable. Some people carry words that sound wise, but are soaked in fear. And if you let those words drip into your heart, they'll poison your progress. Every dream begins as a fragile seed, small, delicate, and full of potential. But the moment you start talking about it, you expose it to the elements. You hand it over to people who may not have the soil to nurture it. They may not mean harm, but they don't understand growth at your level. They don't see what you see. They can't feel what you feel. They can't imagine what's possible because they've never stepped outside of what's comfortable. That's why so many dreams die in conversation. Not because the dream was impossible, but because it was shared with the wrong person. You said something big to someone who only thinks small. You told a limitless vision to someone who lives behind walls, and when they looked at you, their doubt became a mirror that reflected back your own insecurity. You said, "I'm going to start a business," and they said, "That's risky." You said, "I'm going to write a book," and they said, "Do you really think people will read it?" You said, "I'm going to change my life," and they laughed. You've been saying that for years. They don't mean to crush you. They just don't have the capacity to understand you. But if you're not careful, you'll start shrinking your vision to fit their comfort zone. You'll start editing your dreams to make them sound realistic. You'll start trading boldness for approval. And before you know it, the fire that once burned bright will flicker into silence, not because it wasn't strong enough, but because you kept showing it to people who kept blowing it out. You must protect your plans like you protect your peace. Guard them like treasure, because they are. The wrong person can't carry the weight of what you're building. They'll fumble it. They'll underestimate it. They'll question it until you start questioning yourself. Sometimes silence isn't secrecy, it's protection. You're not hiding your dream, you're giving it space to grow roots. You're letting it mature before you expose it to the light. Because if you reveal it too early, people will start picking at it, analyzing it, doubting it, and before long, you'll start doubting it too. You need to learn how to move quietly, not because you're afraid, but because you're focused. The people who need to know your plans will find out when your results are ready. The ones who doubted you won't need an explanation. Your success will answer every question. Here's the truth: you don't owe everyone access to your vision. Some people are meant to watch your journey, not walk it with you. Some are meant to witness your success, not participate in your process. And some are meant to be left behind, not because you don't love them, but because they can't grow where you're going. The higher you rise, the smaller your circle becomes. The more focused you get, the quieter your environment needs to be, because the sound of everyone else's opinion can drown out the whisper of your purpose. So be careful who you let speak into your plans. Some people will project their fears onto you. Some will plant seeds of doubt disguised as advice. And some will act supportive while secretly hoping you fail, because your success would remind them of what they never had the courage to do. You don't need validation from the wrong crowd. You don't need approval from people who don't even believe in themselves. You just need clarity. You need conviction. You need silence long enough to hear your own potential speaking back to you. When you protect your plans, you protect your power. When you stay quiet about your next move, you keep control over your direction. Because the moment you hand your vision to someone else's opinion, you give them permission to shape your future. So, don't be afraid to keep some things to yourself. Let your next move be known only to you and the God who gave you the vision. Let the world see your progress, not your process. Let your results speak, not your explanations. The truth is, you don't need to announce what's coming next. You just need to show up prepared. Because when the timing is right, your breakthrough will speak louder than your words ever could. Remember this: the wrong ears can't handle the right dream. So keep your vision sacred. Keep your energy clean. Keep your plans between you and your purpose until they're ready to be seen. Confidence doesn't need announcement. Real confidence doesn't have to introduce itself, prove itself, or defend itself. It simply is. It walks into the room quietly but changes the atmosphere. It doesn't need a spotlight because it already shines from within. Confidence doesn't come from what you say about yourself. It comes from what you know about yourself and from what you've built when nobody was watching. You see, people who constantly talk about what they're doing, what they're planning, what they're becoming, they're usually looking for reassurance. They're searching for someone to validate their importance, to clap for their potential. But when you truly know who you are and where you're going, you don't need applause. You don't need anyone to say, "I see you." You just move because your purpose is louder than people's opinions. There's a quiet kind of strength that doesn't shout. It doesn't boast. It just acts. When you're really confident, you don't have to convince anyone to believe in you. You've already convinced yourself, and that's enough. Think about it. Lions don't roar to prove they're lions. They roar to express their presence. Confidence is the same way. It's not about proving superiority. It's about moving with certainty. When you know your value, you don't compete for attention, you attract it. You don't chase opportunities, you create them. The most powerful people in the world are often the most silent in their climb. They're not talking about every little win. They're not broadcasting every move. They're busy building something so strong that by the time they reveal it, nobody can question it, because confidence is not built in conversation, it's built in consistency. People confuse arrogance with confidence. Arrogance screams, "Look at me," but confidence whispers, "Watch me." Arrogance needs attention to survive, but confidence thrives in solitude. When you're arrogant, your energy is loud but empty. When you're confident, your energy is calm but magnetic. You don't need to tell people you're working hard when your results are undeniable. You don't need to explain your value when your presence already proves it. You don't need to post every small achievement just to be seen, because when you're truly walking in your purpose, you are the evidence. True confidence is built in the quiet moments of struggle. It's forged in failure, sharpened in rejection, and strengthened in private battles. The world only sees the outcome, but confidence comes from the process. The hours nobody saw, the effort nobody celebrated, the pain nobody understood. That's why confident people move differently. They don't rush. They don't panic. They don't need to justify their journey. They understand that the world will see when it's meant to see. Until then, they just keep building. When you're confident, silence becomes your weapon, because silence makes people curious. It makes them watch. It makes them wonder what you're up to. And by the time they find out it's already done, you don't have to announce your progress when your results make noise for you. But here's the truth. You can't fake this kind of confidence. It's not about posture or pretending. It's not about memorizing quotes or repeating affirmations you don't believe. Real confidence comes from doing the work, facing your fears, keeping your word to yourself. Every time you follow through, you build trust with yourself, and that trust becomes unshakable confidence. That's why people who are truly confident don't talk too much about their plans. They're too busy executing them. They don't seek validation from others because they've already validated themselves through their own discipline. If you have to constantly prove who you are, you haven't fully accepted who you are. Confidence doesn't ask for permission. It takes up space naturally. It doesn't need to declare success. It embodies success before anyone else sees it. The moment you stop needing to explain your worth, you start to live in peace. You start to attract the right opportunities, the right people, the right energy, because you're no longer chasing recognition, you're radiating authenticity. And authenticity always wins. Remember this: empty barrels make the loudest noise. People who lack confidence often overcompensate with words, but those who are rooted in purpose, those who've done the work, they let their presence do the talking. So don't waste time explaining your vision. Don't announce every step. Don't tell people you're about to blow up. Just move like it's already done. Because real confidence doesn't say, I'm going to make it. Real confidence says, it's only a matter of time. And when that time comes, when the world finally sees what you've been building, they'll realize you were never silent. You were simply focused. Mystery is magnetic. There's something powerful about not being fully understood, something captivating about someone who doesn't reveal everything they're thinking or planning. In a world where everyone is oversharing, over-explaining, and constantly trying to prove themselves, being mysterious makes you unforgettable. Because people chase what they can't easily figure out. They're drawn to what feels uncertain, unpredictable, and slightly out of reach. You don't have to tell people everything you're doing. In fact, the moment you start explaining every detail of your process, you take away the magic. You turn mystery into predictability, and predictability never inspired anyone. When people know every move you're going to make, they stop watching. But when they can't read your next step, you stay on their mind. Mystery builds anticipation, and anticipation creates influence. That's why the most powerful people move quietly, not because they're afraid, but because they understand the value of curiosity. Curiosity keeps people leaning in. It keeps them guessing, wondering, and paying attention. The unknown makes people want to know more, and that's exactly how real influence works. Think about it. Every time someone leaves a little room for imagination, the mind fills in the blanks with fascination. When you're not constantly explaining yourself, people start forming their own stories about who you are and what you're doing. And more often than not, those stories make you seem even bigger, even more capable, even more interesting than you could describe yourself. That's the power of mystery. You don't have to show your whole hand. You don't have to post every idea, every plan, every move. Keep some things hidden. Let people wonder what's going on behind the curtain. Let them question how you're pulling it off. Let them be surprised when the results appear out of nowhere. That's how legends move. They don't announce their greatness. They reveal it at the right time. Mystery is not about manipulation. It's about mastery. It's about knowing that silence can speak louder than 1,000 explanations. When you stop broadcasting every detail, you reclaim control over your narrative. You stop giving people the power to define your story, because the more they know, the more they assume. The less they know, the more they respect the unknown. There's a reason we're fascinated by people who seem calm, composed, and unreadable. They're not easily impressed. They're not desperate to be understood. They carry a quiet power, the kind that makes others lean in just to figure out what's going on inside their mind. That's what mystery does. It shifts the energy. Instead of you chasing attention, attention starts chasing you. When you hold something back, when you let your work speak, instead of your words, you become magnetic. People start to say things like, there's something different about them, or I can't quite figure them out, but I want to know more. And that curiosity becomes energy. It pulls opportunities, respect, and influence toward you without you having to demand it. You see, when everyone else is trying to be seen, mystery allows you to stand out by being unavailable. The world respects what it can't easily access. The moment you make yourself too predictable, too reachable, too explainable, you lose that edge, because mystery breeds fascination, and fascination builds power. Even in your personal life, mystery matters. Not every thought needs to be shared. Not every emotion needs to be broadcasted. Not every plan needs to be discussed. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing, because silence gives space for others to wonder, and wondering keeps you relevant in their mind. When you move quietly, people will start creating their own stories about you. Some will underestimate you. Some will overestimate you. But all of them will keep talking, and that's the goal. You don't need to explain yourself when your actions and results can speak for you in ways words never could. And when you finally reveal what you've been building, when the work you've done in silence comes to light, the impact hits harder because nobody saw it coming. That's the beauty of mystery. It multiplies the weight of your success. The quieter you were, the louder your results sound when they finally appear, so don't ruin your power by oversharing your process. Don't drain your energy trying to make people understand your every move. Let them wonder, let them question, let them speculate. Because every moment they spend trying to figure you out is a moment they're focused on you. Remember this, the world doesn't admire the predictable. It admires the unexplainable. The ones who don't talk about what they're doing, but somehow always seem to be doing more than anyone else. That's not luck. That's the strategic power of mystery. So be calm, be silent, be unpredictable. Move in ways that make people pay attention without you asking for it. And when it's time to speak, let your results reveal everything they were never supposed to see coming. Because mystery isn't hiding, mystery is power reserved. It's you saying, you'll know when it's time. And when that time comes, your silence will have already spoken louder than words ever could. Let your results introduce you. You don't need to explain who you are, what you're doing, or why you're doing it. The world doesn't need your introduction. It needs your proof. Your consistency, your discipline, and your excellence will speak for you in ways your words never can. When your results walk into the room, they speak louder than your voice ever will, because talk fades, but results echo. People will always have opinions. They'll guess, they'll doubt, they'll assume, but results silence all of that. When you produce something undeniable, something real, something visible, there's nothing left to argue about. You don't have to convince anyone of your worth. You don't have to defend your dreams or justify your direction. The evidence becomes your argument. When you let your results introduce you, you move from explaining to demonstrating. You no longer need to say, I'm working hard, because people can see it. You don't need to say, I'm going places, because your movement makes that clear. You don't need to prove your value. Your results do it for you. Results are the universal language of credibility, and they don't lie. The truth is, most people stop at intention. They talk about what they want to do, what they plan to do, what they could do, but few people follow through long enough to turn words into substance. That's why the ones who do are so respected. They don't just make promises, they make progress. They don't talk about vision, they manifest it. When you operate from that space, when your results speak for you, your presence starts to command respect without demanding it. People start listening before you speak. They start paying attention when you move, because they recognize something real. They see the weight of your effort in the way you carry yourself, in the way you deliver, in the way you show up every time without excuse. There's something powerful about a person who just shows up and performs. No noise, no announcement, just excellence. The quiet confidence of someone who's mastered their craft is magnetic. They don't talk about being great, they simply are. And people can feel that. You can tell someone you're disciplined, or they can watch you live it. You can tell someone you're a leader, or they can see the impact you create. You can tell someone you're committed, or they can watch you keep showing up when everyone else quits. Words are easy. Results are rare. That's why results have value. You don't have to prove yourself to people who can't see your vision. You just have to produce. When you produce, your work travels farther than your voice. It reaches places your explanations never could. It opens doors you didn't even knock on. Because real results have a presence. They speak on your behalf long after you've left the room. When you let your results introduce you, you stop chasing recognition. You stop begging for acknowledgement. You stop trying to be seen. Instead, you focus on building something so solid, so undeniable, that the world can't ignore it. Because when you build at that level, the right people will find you. The right opportunities will come to you. You won't have to ask to be noticed. You'll earn attention by what you've done. There's a peace that comes when you stop trying to convince everyone and just let your results handle the conversation. The arguments fade, the criticism fades. Because even your critics can't deny what's visible. They may not like you, but they'll have to respect you. They'll have to acknowledge what you've achieved, even in silence. Your consistency becomes your resume. Your discipline becomes your reference. Your transformation becomes your proof. You don't need to speak loudly when your life speaks clearly. When your results introduce you, they tell a story no one can rewrite. They carry your name farther than any title could. They create trust without explanation. They command respect without demand. So stop talking about what you're about to do. Stop promising change and start becoming it. Let your work reveal who you are. Let your character reveal what you stand for. Let your results reveal what you're capable of. Because the moment your results start speaking, the conversation changes. People stop asking, "Who are you?" and start saying, "How did you do it?" That's when you know you've arrived, not because you talked your way there, but because you worked your way there. Remember this, the loudest person in the room often has the least to show. The one who works quietly in the dark eventually owns the spotlight. So build in silence, stay consistent, and let time be your witness. Because when the dust settles, it won't be your promises that people remember. It will be your proof. Let your results introduce you. Because words fade, but legacy doesn't. True confidence is quiet. You can always tell who's truly confident, not by how loud they speak, but by how calm they are. Real confidence doesn't need to scream. It doesn't need to boast. It doesn't need to prove anything. It moves with peace. It walks with purpose. It doesn't chase attention because it knows that attention will come when the time is right. People often mistake confidence for noise. They think the one who talks the most, posts the most, or demands the most spotlight is the strongest. But that's not strength, that's insecurity in disguise. The louder someone tries to prove who they are, the more they're trying to convince themselves. Because when you know who you are, you don't need to explain it to anyone. You don't need validation, you need vision. True confidence is built quietly, in the unseen hours, in the moments of doubt that you push through, in the promises you keep to yourself. Every time you do what you said you would do, every time you get back up after failure, every time you push forward when no one is cheering, you build an inner strength that no one can shake. That's where confidence lies. Not in attention, but in alignment. It's the quiet kind of power that doesn't depend on the crowd. You can put a confident person in an empty room, and they'll still walk like they belong there. They don't need people to agree with them because they've already agreed with themselves. They've made peace with their path. They've learned that silence can be stronger than speeches and presence can be louder than performance. When you see someone who's truly confident, you'll notice something. They don't compare. They're not looking left or right to see what others are doing. They're focused forward. They're not jealous of other people's success, because they understand that what's for them cannot be taken from them. They don't move with desperation, they move with direction. Quiet confidence is powerful because it's rooted in truth. It's not based on hype, approval, or status. It's based on work. It's built from experience, from resilience, from lessons that broke you and built you at the same time. It's a confidence that doesn't need to shout because the proof of who you are is already written in how you carry